As we're sure many of you have noticed, many of the Star Wars species were designed to be hot. There's no shortage of inappropriate content if someone tries to look for it on the internet, with some fan favorites being species like the Togruta and Cathar. What might surprise you to learn, however, is that this isn't just a real-world phenomenon. Even within the Star Wars universe, there were certain species considered by humanoids to be exceptionally attractive as part of their species' traits, and as a result, they were often sexualized and mistreated. For science, today we'll be looking at some of the sexiest species by Star Wars standards in order to explore the depths of the galaxy's dirty mind. For the sake of the video, we'll only be focusing on species that were objectively considered more desirable than average, just to filter out people's general preferences. The first species we'll be looking at today are the Kage, a species of near-humans native to the planet Quarzite in the Inner Rim. Quarzite was a small world that experienced extreme atmospheric pressure and terrible storms, which rendered its surface uninhabitable. Instead, life developed within the planet's crystalline caverns, where crystal formations glowed constantly purple and underground lakes sustained fungi and lichen. The Kage were one of the two sentient species that evolved on the planet, the other being the Belugans. Of all their traits, they were best known for their beauty and warrior nature. By most humanoid standards, Kage were exceptionally beautiful. With pale skin, very dark or white hair, and striking eyes in gold, green, or pink that had evolved to see in the gloom, Kage stood out immediately. They were also naturally athletic, a quality they honed from a young age. Well known for their quick reflexes and nimble grace, they were a people known for their devotion to duty, feisty personalities, and dedication. These traits were incredibly important to the Kage warriors, a cadre of the Kage's most powerful combatants. This group of highly skilled, stealthy martial artist fighters had formed to protect the Kage from their planetary neighbors, the Belugans, with whom they were at constant war. These warriors trained ceaselessly in order to be in the best physical condition at all times. Riding atop their multi-legged Mylodon companions and armed with electro swords, they patrolled the underground crystal caverns and protected their communities tirelessly. Another more unique trait of the Kage was that they could form memories from a very young age, almost immediately after birth. Their striking appearance, flexibility, and athletic prowess were all contributing factors to the galaxy finding them so irresistibly attractive, but there are others that were even more sought after. In many ways, our second entry on this list is very similar to our first. The Epicanthix were another species of near-humans native to the planet Panatha in the Outer Rim. On average, they didn't look too different from humans, featuring faces that were a little longer, narrow eyes, and black hair. This similarity led many scholars to believe they were a recent mutation, possibly the result of a failed colonization attempt. Where they really stood out, however, was in their builds. Epicanthix were lithe and nimble, with willowy silhouettes that hid substantial musculation. Their body wasn't just genetics either. The Epicanthix worked tirelessly to hone their physiques. They were a race of warriors famous for their military might and adoration of art. Combat readiness was particularly important among them, yet it was never to be the sole focus over cultural enrichment. These two seemingly opposite ideals melded beautifully into Epicanthix culture and aesthetics, with individuals and starships alike being described as beautiful but deadly. They did their hair up in stunning ceremonial styles that were also practical for combat, and though their bodies were honed for war, they were also toned for beauty. As a final interesting trait, some Epicanthix had a natural, subconscious talent of shielding their minds from mind-altering force powers like the mind trick. Despite being more than capable of space exploration, these warriors remained sequestered on their remote world, not really connected to galactic happenings until the time of the Galactic Empire. Upon first contact with the Empire, many left to explore the galaxy, returning soon after, overwhelmed with its sheer diversity and vastness. In the end, most of the species were content to remain in their corner of the galaxy, dealing with problems when they arose and remaining fairly isolated. Those that did leave, however, sparked significant interest and admiration among the galactic population, who were both entranced with the novelty of the species as well as their meticulously tailored outer appearance. Although less overtly sexualized, the Pantorans of Pantora were also considered to be quite attractive, with many characters across the franchise commenting positively on their outside appearance. Native to the moon orbiting Ord Plutonia, these near-humans mainly differed from humans in their skin, hair, and eye colors. Considered as a likely offshoot of the Runians, Pantorans had delicately blue skin, hair that ranged from black to purple to white, and striking yellow eyes. Much like the Kage, they were similar enough to humans to feel safe and familiar, while strikingly different enough to be considered more than averagely attractive. Pantoran society was governed by the Pantoran Assembly, a democratically elected body. Though they had long since made the transition to democracy, some feudal traits from their ancient past still lingered, like the tradition of marking their cheeks and foreheads with yellow paint to symbolize their heritage. Rather than causing strife, however, these traditions only sparked an interest in genealogy. Pantora wasn't without danger, however. Spice merchants, smugglers, and slavers frequented the world, which in turn led to the Pantorans themselves becoming fierce and proud. The presence of slavers is also another hint at their general appeal, as we'll see with later entries, though we have to specify it's never outwardly stated that they were considered to be more sexually appealing than average. The same, however, cannot be said about the Hapans, the near-human natives of the Hapans cluster of the Inner Rim. Within the cluster was the Hapans Consortium, a multi-star system matriarchal monarchy with Hapans itself as the capital. Due to the closely packed star clusters and nebulae surrounding it, it had become quite insular and isolationist. As the Hapans were a recent offshoot, their genome hadn't mutated so much that they would be considered a new species. Instead, they were considered a subspecies of humans with some unusual characteristics. The first of these was their extremely poor night vision, and the second was their above average appearance by human standards. Unfortunately, their beauty was the result of some pretty twisted eugenics practices. Around 4000 BBY, the pirates then living in the consortium had captured humans and taken them as their slaves, choosing to bed only the most beautiful among them. In this sense, the Hapans had been selectively bred to be beautiful, and thanks to the limited gene pool, this had eventually evolved into a species trait. Another odd quirk of the Hapan society was their staunchly matriarchal ways. As many of the men had been killed during a conflict with the Jedi around 4000 BBY, the Hapans had established a matriarchal society led by a queen mother. For thousands of years, they remained in isolation until, in 8 ABY, they began to have more regular contact with the galaxy. This, of course, exposed them to the galaxy's lascivious ways, which immediately marked the entire subspecies as attractive. It's unclear what the Hapans believed about their characterization, which isn't something we can say about the next entry on our list. Naturally, we couldn't make this video without mentioning the Zeltrons, a species of near-humans native to the planet Zeltros in the Inner Rim. Unlike the Hapans, however, they had differentiated enough from the base human genome in order to count as an entirely different species. Much like all the others on this list, Zeltrons were seen as exceptionally beautiful, this time not just by humans and near-humans, but even by many non-human species. Their most striking features were their skin, which seemed to almost glow in shades of red and pink, and their hair, which was always brightly colored, often blue or red. Their eyes were also brightly colored and sharp, coming in many colors such as magenta and purple. Whenever they experienced strong emotions, their skin would flush an even deeper shade. Adding to these seemingly very appealing traits, most Zeltrons were also tall, at least 1.8 meters, and usually in very good physical shape. But it wasn't just their physical appearance that made Zeltrons so attractive to the galaxy at large. Their personalities and culture also contributed heavily. You see, the Zeltrons knew that they looked good, and they liked it. Instead of shying away from others' attention, Zeltrons did all they could to stand out, dressing mainly in brightly coloured clothes and neons or wild patterns that showed off as much skin as humanly possible. This included helpful details like deep cleavages, skin-tight latex fabrics, and even bikinis as everyday clothing. All of this, of course, served a purpose. As they differentiated from the human genome, Zeltrons had evolved to possess two unique biological traits that were the reason behind their attention-seeking behavior. The first of these traits were the natural pheromones Zeltrons gave off when in proximity to other beings, regardless of their species. These pheromones, similar to the ones the Follina fused, had multiple effects on other beings. One was the enhancement of the Zeltrons' perceived attractiveness and sex appeal, making them more desirable the longer one was exposed to them. A related effect was that, when exposed to these pheromones, they appeared more likable and pleasant to be around, which, coupled with their enthusiastic personalities and vivacity, made them incredibly popular. It was said that, even when meeting a Zeltron for the first time, they felt like a familiar face, an effect that was likely due to the pheromones. Finally, a less studied effect of the pheromones was their calming influence. As an example, Lacerca Demaris, who was a resistance fighter, was able to calm down an angry Gagoran just by petting it. The second key Zeltron trait was their limited telepathic ability, which somewhat resembled force empathy. They could project their emotions onto other sentient creatures or read and experience what others were feeling. Given how useful this ability could be in manipulating others, many Zeltrons were hired by the exchange. Thanks to this unique combination of traits and skills, Zeltrons excelled at influencing others' emotions, but they were also susceptible to their influence in turn. Surrounded by their kind, Zeltrons experienced a type of emotional echo chamber. They experienced emotions more strongly than other species, particularly when it came to those they loved. Their intense emotions were simultaneously a blessing and a curse, as they could be passionate lovers or fierce fighters when taken by anger or bitterness. Their propensity for rash action was why, from a very young age, Zeltrons were cautioned to be mindful of their emotions instead of letting them influence all of their decisions. Their natural empathy and pheromones were such an intrinsic part of their biology that they ended up shaping the nature of Zeltron culture and society to be one of the most fun-loving, thrill-seeking places in the galaxy. There's a reason we picked Zeltros as one of the top holiday destinations for those seeking to party. Since the Zeltrons lived their daily lives being bombarded with the emotions of everyone around them, they created a society that sought to make those emotions as pleasant as possible. The entire planet of Zeltros was one big party filled with casinos, pleasure houses, bars, nightclubs, and everything else under the sun you could think of. In their thirst for pleasure, Zeltrons threw themselves wholeheartedly in the pursuit of good vibes and feels, to the point that any downers that somehow survived their pheromone barrage would be ejected from the world for being too negative. Culturally, they were obsessed with the ideals of love, romance, and sexuality, seeking out romantic love wherever possible, as it was considered to be one of the most positive emotions one could feel. They had a similar approach to sex, having as much of it as they could, with as many people as they could. The concept of monogamy seemed cute to them, but incredibly limiting. Zeltrons didn't just limit themselves to carnal pleasures, however. Quite the opposite. Anything that could produce a rush of excitement was fair game. Gambling was a favorite pastime, and groups of young Zeltrons often went out on the town together, feeding off each other's enthusiasm. Zeltron society went to great lengths to devise newer, brighter, better ways to have fun, such as the Hologram Fun World, which was a massive space station amusement park. The park applied hologram technology to create unique attractions like simulations of pleasant holiday spots or exciting make-believe scenarios. Sometimes, however, their ingenuity took a darker turn. Zeltros was also known for its rampant substance abuse, from harmless aphrodisiacs and mood boosters to more malicious cocktails such as the elixir of infatuation, colorless, odorless, and flavorless substance that caused the consumer to become instantly infatuated with the first person they saw. All of this naturally contributed to them being seen as irresistible. Not only were the Zeltrons extremely physically attractive, but they could use their pheromones to enhance the attraction others felt when seeing them. Overall, their fun-loving, pleasure-seeking personalities made them all the more appealing. Their relentless pursuit of hedonism earned them a certain reputation, but it's also what differentiates them, in our opinion, from our last entry on this list, the Twi'leks. To address the bantha in the room, we have to talk about the Twi'leks. Out of all the species Star Wars has ever introduced, we're firmly of the opinion that no other has ever been as sexualized both in and out of universe as much as the Twi'leks. As we're positive every single one of you knows, Twi'leks were humanoids native to the planet Ryloth in the Outer Rim. Their most distinguishing features were, of course, their leku, long, prehensile head tails that served a number of functions. The primary one was as extensions of the Twi'leks' nervous system. Parts of a Twi'lek's brains were located in the base of their leku, including parts that controlled long-term memory storage and basic motor functions. Because they were so sensitive, an injury to the leku could cause serious brain damage. Even if they weren't damaged, they were very sensitive, and even just a hard tug could incapacitate a Twi'lek. They also served to store fat. Particularly overweight Twi'leks would often grow a second set of leku just for storing fat, which were usually draped over their chests. The function that was most connected to our current topic, however, was their purpose as erogenous zones. As we mentioned, leku were sensitive, which made them extremely appealing to each other and other humanoids. Beyond their leku, Twi'leks had other characteristic physical traits that set them apart. One such trait was their colorful skin, which could be any color from bright blue to sunshine yellow and deep coral. Skin color usually indicated which region of Ryloth a Twi'lek was from, and some were more common than others, with green-skinned Twi'leks being the most common and red-skinned Twi'leks being a 1 in a million. Just as with their leku, their vibrant skin tones were also considered to be extremely attractive. In other aspects, Twi'leks weren't more or less attractive than other species. Their fingers ended in sharp claws, and females' ears were shaped like soft, conical structures. They also had multiple stomachs that could digest almost anything, which was incredibly important given their homeworld, which we'll talk about next, as it plays an important role in their widespread sexualization. You see, Ryloth was a tidally locked planet, meaning that one side always faced the sun and the other never saw it. As a result, one half of the planet was scorching hot, and the other a frozen hellscape of darkness. Most planets like this are completely uninhabitable, but on Ryloth, life had found a way to evolve along the temperate band that was the border between the two extremes. Even there, however, life was exceptionally hard. The atmosphere was thin and water was scarce. Most of Ryloth's surface was inhospitable desert with only a few rare areas of forests and swamps. Finding water was hard, and gathering food was even harder. As a society, Twi'leks were divided into clans, which formed clan cities and didn't intermingle much outside skirmishes. Unlike Imperial propaganda, however, they weren't a warlike people. In fact, they were extremely hospitable and open. This, however, didn't wash away the darker parts of their society. The strict feudal clan system led to massive societal and economic inequalities in a world where life was already hard enough. The more downtrodden Twi'leks were pushed out into the slums of their cities, where they were easy prey for the slave trade. The clans themselves did little to stop this, even participating willingly in selling captured members of rival clans to the many criminal organizations that preyed on the weak of Ryloth. Female Twi'leks in particular were targeted by the slave trade, both because of widespread demand across the galaxy and because Ryloth was a very misogynistic world. Twi'lek women were viewed as so worthless that male clan leaders would sell members of their own clans to slave traders, and even among clans, the sale of dancing girls was a practice common since ancient times. With that said, Twi'lek slaves made their way across the galaxy. They were viewed as stunningly beautiful and exotic by many species, including the Hutts, who were behind some of the worst aspects of the slave trade. They were valued not just for their appearance, but also for their grace and dancing ability, which led to the common trope of slave bikini Twi'leks dancing in every club on Nar Shaddaa. Born on an inhospitable world and sold into slavery by their own clansmen, we don't envy the life of a female Twi'lek. And there you have it. We hope you enjoyed this foray into one of the less wholesome aspects of Star Wars lore. As always, we've enjoyed delving deeper into a bit of world building often overlooked, but this is just one facet of many. What less colourful Star Wars question do you want answered next? Let us know all that and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.